What's up, class? Today is Wednesday, my dudes, March 25th. It's like 9:56 a.m. while I'm making this video. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna rattle through the rest of these slides. So I'm gonna go from 20 to 38, and I'll post this on the classroom. Keep up doing your work. Any work you're doing, I'm throwing in the grade book, and it's raising your grade. So keep doing your stuff so I can get that stuff in by the 27th. Let's go through here. We'll go to start on slide 20. I'll give you a second to open your slides. So I'll give you a second here, and then we'll get started. All right. So yesterday we talked about the barriers to entry. Today we're going to talk about kind of pretty much the rest of this business unit. We're going to start with talking about like markets and what makes them competitive. There's going to be some videos I'm going to want you to watch in the lecture. So we'll start from here. So slide 20. This is where we have a perfectly competitive market. What that means is it's got to fill 4 criteria. 1, the market has many buyers and sellers. 2, all firms sell identical goods. 3, buyers and sellers have relevant information about prices, product, quality, sources of supply, and so on. And then 4, firms have easy entry into and out of the market. So, perfectly competitive, what does that even mean to me? Well, on the next slide, I've provided examples with you for us to figure out, are these markets competitive? So, start with the taco company. Let's see, can it scratch off all 4 criteria to be a perfectly competitive market? Okay, 1, the market has many buyers and sellers. Yes. 2, all firms sell identical goods. You can make that argument, but is Taco Bell the same as a taqueria? Probably not. Okay, so 2's kind of soft. 3, buyers and sellers have relevant information about prices, product quality, sources, and sources of supply. No. Tacos are made from different ingredients. Again, Taco Bell tacos are going to be different than a El Gordo taco or etc. Right? So it really falls apart on 3. 4, firms have easy entry into and out of the market. Yeah, it's not too hard. If you want to really start a taco stand, you probably could. Right? It can't be that hard. So it kind of falls apart at 3 and then a little bit on 2. Let's go to smartphone companies. The market has many buyers and sellers. Yes. All firms sell identical goods. A Samsung and an iPhone are different, but you could make the argument that they're relatively similar. So 2 is soft. But let's see 3. Buyers and sellers have relevant information about prices, product quality, source of supply, and so on. For the most part, yes. To make a phone, it's the technology, at least on the hardware side, is going to be pretty much the same. The only thing that might be different is like software. Again, that's a little soft, but you can make the argument that, yeah, it fulfills criteria 3. But number 4, do firms have easy entry into and out of the market? Not really. You need to have the ability to get the resources which are found across the world. You need to have factories. That costs a lot of money. There's a lot of startup costs with trying to make your own phones and stuff. So it's not going to be necessarily the easiest way to get in. So it's not going to fill criteria 4. What about gasoline companies? Market has many buyers and sellers? Yes. Firms sell identical goods? Yes. 3, do they have relevant information? Yes. 4, do they have easy entry? No, not at all. Gasoline companies, you need to have oil drilling machines across the globe, and you need to have oil tankers and ships, and they cost tens of millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars just to transport your oil. So that's even harder, okay? What about social media companies? This market has many buyers and sellers. Yes. Do they sell all identical goods? Not really, right? Snapchat is different than Instagram, which is different than Facebook. 3, do they have relevant information about prices, product? Yes, number 3. And 4, do firms have easy entry? Yes. So the only one it doesn't have is 2. Number 4, it's pretty easy. If some of the people started Facebook and all these other companies, they did so out of college in their parents' basements. right? They just knew how to code. So this one would fill every criteria except 2. Let's go number 5, agriculture. Well, one of these has got to be correct. The market has many buyers and sellers. Yes. All firms sell identical goods. Yeah, potato is pretty much a potato, right? It doesn't really change too much. I mean, you could throw some steroids in it and make it bigger, but for the most part, it's still a potato. Buyers and sellers have relevant information, da 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 da. Yeah, to grow a potato, you gotta have sun, water, good soil, right? That hasn't changed for thousands of years. Do firms have easy entry into and out of the market? You do need a significant amount of land if you want to have a big farm, but I could have a little farm in my backyard if I really want to grow some things, and I could sell them at a farmer's market. So, in this case, out of the 5 companies that I listed, agricultural companies, they're probably the most perfectly competitive markets that we see across the economic landscape. Okay? So let's keep going on, because I don't want to drag this video on too long. Number 22, it's Monopoly. It's the Monopoly guy. I played Monopoly the other night, and I lost. Let's go to slide 23. Let's talk about a monopoly market. So, 3 criteria. The market consists of one seller. The single seller sells a product that has no close substitutes, and the barriers to entry are high, which means the entry into the market is extremely difficult for any startup companies. You might have learned about this in U.S. history with Standard Oil. This is when Rockefeller pretty much controlled the entire oil industry in America. The United States, we're not really cool with monopolies. We're like, we don't like monopolies. We don't think they're good for like a capitalistic market, and we want competition. There was fears that without competition, Rockefeller could just raise prices really high and not improve the standard of his like workforce, his factories, his actual like product itself. So we're going to talk about how like Standard Oil got broken up and disbanded and became, multiple companies and such, but we'll get there. Let's talk about slide 24. There are barriers to monopolies. Legal barriers. There are some legal rules that allow and prevent for monopolies to exist. So one is the USPS. It's the U.S. Postal Service. It's the only company in the United States where you can send mail. Not like parcels, not like packages, but mail through the United States Postal Service. Cities make it illegal for more than one company to collect trash. So like Waste Management is a common company that is the waste management for an entire city or area. Waste Management is the big one. But in cities deal out these contracts with different waste providers. Where I live in Oakland, it's not Waste Management. At least in my area, it's a different company. I couldn't tell you the company. But I know it's not Waste Management. So let's go to slide 25. Antitrust laws. Okay. These are dealing with trusts, and these are dealing with monopolies, and these are preventing the two from occurring. Just for a reminder from U.S. history, a trust is like when you have 2 companies that are in the same industry. Let's say we have, we'll use the phone company, and AT&T and Verizon, although they're in competition, they're in the same industry, and they both know that if they kind of low-key work together, they can manipulate the market to make more money. For example, if AT&T decides to raise their prices, they would let Verizon know, and therefore Verizon would match their prices. That way, instead of a bunch of people leaving AT&T and going to Verizon, AT&T would be able to keep their prices high. Verizon could then raise their price on their customers, and now both companies are making more money. That's a trust. That's why it's called a trust. Is the idea that if, hey, I'm the competitor, but if we work together, we both can make money. Again, the United States isn't cool with that. So we have like the Sherman Antitrust Act. Pretty much prevents companies from merging, kind of forming mega monopolies or doing backroom deals where they're raising prices equally. Like for example, if AT&T and Verizon merged, they'd control probably 80%, 70, 80% of the entire like internet and cell phone data usage in the country. So I mean, they could really jack up prices on people, and they'd be very powerful. It'd be a very powerful company. Next one, the Wheeler-Lee Act. This allows the FTC, or the Federal Trade Commission, to regulate misleading acts or practices by businesses. So I can't lie about my business and say, Mr. Tomei's Tacos are the going to heal you of all your sickness and all your diseases. If I do that, I can kind of get in trouble. So the video I included that you should watch if you want, it's pretty funny. It's one of the John Oliver ones. It talks about how like churches, especially like churches that broadcast on television, televangelists is what they're called, how they kind of manipulate and prey on like people who are desperate and poor for their money by misleading, saying, hey, you send us some things, we'll make sure your cancer gets healed. And so sometimes people will pay, because they're desperate, will pay thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to these companies. And obviously their cancer is not going to get healed. If it does, maybe that, they're lucky, and that's what keeps perpetuating this idea that, the televangelist can save you. But reality is, if you're not going to a doctor or your body somehow fights it off, you're not going to beat cancer. So it's an interesting video. It's one of the John Oliver ones. I suggest you watch it. Let's go to slide 26. In fact, I'll even give you, if you want to pause here, pause so you can watch the video. It's like 18 minutes. I'll wait a second. Okay. Let's go to slide 26. There are natural monopolies. Natural monopolies can exist where there are high infrastructural costs and other large barriers to entries. Examples include utility companies like water and gas providers. For us, PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, they pretty much control all of the gas and electricity pretty much from here through Sacramento all the way through Northern California, and actually even kind of down through Central California. They're the largest gas and electricity utility company in the entire nation in terms of overall square mileage. We're going to talk about them in a second. And then where we get our water from is EBMUD, East Bay Municipal Utility District. Pretty much everyone in the East Bay gets their water from EBMUD, or at least in kind of our area. Gets their water from EBMUD. But let's talk about PG&E, because they're a little shaky. So there's 3 videos that I've included. Go ahead and watch those videos, but do so after I'm done talking. I'll give you a chance to pause. So PG&E is especially kind of in an interesting light since I first made these slides probably 4 or 5 years ago. It's every year it's like something new for them that only proves the point. So to build gas lines, electrical lines, right, it costs a lot of money. Think about all the electrical wiring in Hayward, in the school. I mean, think about all the telephone wires, right? Then multiply that by all of Northern California to make, develop, and keep up with that and upgrading it and keeping it working. It's very expensive. It costs a lot of money. PG&E was the only company that really had, at the beginning, when we started building a lot of the electrical kind of networking systems, they were the ones who managed, set up, and therefore became a natural monopoly as time has gone on. PG&E is interesting. It's a private company, but it's regulated very tightly by the government. It's kind of tricky. There's a lot of legal jargon and mumbo jumbo that I would have to get into to really explain the relationship, because it's not a completely private company, but just know it's a company that there's government oversight. But here's the deal. PG&E at the end of the day is still a company that wants to make money. And what it's done, unfortunately, for a long time, and a lot of the articles that I've read, I'd probably include now, is instead of paying more money to update its kind of electrical wiring system, or even what a lot of people suggested, put the wiring underground, which is you can do. It's more expensive, but you can do it. They haven't done that. They've paid their stockholders like dividends, which means if you're a stockholder and you own enough stock, you'll get a bonus because you own so much stock, and the bonuses can be millions, tens of millions of dollars. Well, you add that up by hundreds, thousands of people who kind of receive those big end dividends. You're talking a couple $1 billion multiplied over 20, 30 years. I mean, you're talking hundreds of billions of dollars, perhaps even more with inflation. And instead of updating the electrical systems here in California, they've been paying off to kind of the already rich people. Well, here's the problem. As we've seen in the past couple of years, when electrical wires that are not maintained well go down, they create big fires. Fires that kill hundreds of people. Fires that displace tens of thousands of people. Fires that, with the smoke, force people into hospitals, affect those who have asthma, close down. Remember, when the smoke came Mount Eden, they closed down the school. Here's the deal. PG&E, for the most part, has gotten off the hook because at the end of the day, we're going to have to pay more money for all the losses and the legal damages that they're going to have to pay. We're going to have to, because they're the only gas and electric provider. I can't just wake up tomorrow and be like, you know what, PG&E's crooked. I'm going to go to Tomei Gas and Electric. There is no other company. So what can PG&E do? They can raise the prices, right? And they can really do so without any little punishment. And that's kind of what they've been doing for the past couple of years, especially with the fire issues. Recently, however, our governor, Gavin Newsom, he has talked about really going after PG&E and talking about punishing them. There's actually a movement, especially now, and I kind of support this, even though I'm not a big Newsom supporter, is to nationalize gas and electrical companies. So no longer allowing them to be private companies, having it government regulated, more so than it is now, which I think is a better idea, because I'm tired of every summer, having fires. Or, you guys were here when they shut off the power this winter and when it was windy. And they're doing that to save their own skin. And it's kind of ridiculous. So we need to have a better system. So yeah, write to your congressperson about nationalizing the gas and electrical industry. PG&E is trash and they need to fix their ways. So we will continue from there. Okay. We'll go to slide 28. In fact, sorry, I'll give you a second to pause. I want you to watch those videos. All right. So I'll give you a second to pause and we'll come back. All right. So let's talk about a monopolistic competitive market. Similar to monopolies, but different. Most cities have more than one Italian restaurant, but they all sell similar types of dishes. Jeans are all the same, but essentially brand names can be more expensive. Why are certain brands more expensive? They are basically the same thing. Go to slide 29. Brand names, right? I show you a regular t-shirt and a Supreme t-shirt, right? The box logo makes a Supreme t-shirt worth hundreds of dollars. So when you have monopolistic competitive markets, it's where oftentimes you maybe have one brand or one restaurant in a certain city or area that has gotten extremely popular for whatever reason. Maybe it's better quality, maybe it's better taste, whatever it may be, and they pretty much control the entire market in that area. For example, slide 29 is the white t-shirt market. Supreme t-shirts, especially a couple of years ago, if you were just looking at white t-shirts, Supreme was making a lot of money just per t-shirt, right? Probably not more than like a Hanes or something like that, but per t-shirt, Supreme dominated that market. No one could compete. No one could make one t-shirt more popular than Supreme. It's probably still that way now if we're talking just white t-shirts. Unfortunately, because of the coronavirus shutdown, you guys would have had the opportunity to make your own cool t-shirts. And I'm kind of bummed you got robbed of that. And then, of course, I would have had to done my beautiful fashion show, which you would have all loved. But alas, maybe we'll do it if we come back. All right. Let's go to slide 30 now. We're kind of moving here. An oligopolistic market. It has few sellers. Firms produce and sell either identical or slightly differentiated products, and the barriers to entry are significant, which means that entry into the market is difficult. So, for example, what does this mean? Well, it kind of means it's how the American businesses is set up. Go to slide 31. Pretty much the days of the mom and pop shop are over. Small businesses are having probably the hardest time they've ever had in terms of surviving. Most businesses are oftentimes owned by bigger businesses. So, for example, 90% of all media companies, right, that we think of, like MTV, VH1, ESPN, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, they're owned by 6 larger parent companies, right? If I want to start the Tomei television network, I probably wouldn't be able to, just because those 6 companies would make sure that I get the worst channels, the worst airtime. They would make my life harder in terms of getting satellite technology up in the sky. I mean, it would be very hard for me because when 6 companies own 90% of the entire industry, it's hard for little Tomei's television company to ever get started, right? Viewership would be so low, I just would never be making any money. So I'd have to, if I really wanted to be in business, I'd have to make a deal with probably one of those 6 companies. And that's how most new television networks start. They make a deal with one of the 6 mega companies, right? And so that leads us to parent companies and subsidiaries on slide 32. So a parent company is a company that owns enough stock in another company to control its management and business operations. A subsidiary would be the company that is controlled by the parent company. Sometimes companies can just outright buy lower companies, right? And I'm going to give you an example of this. So we go to slide 33. Look at that beautiful fish and that wonderful guy. This is a professional fisherman, but yet he and Disney are actually very well closely related. They're not really that far off. Slide 34. You don't have to write this. If you already did in the notes, good job. But pretty much here's how they're related, okay? Disney owns ABC. ABC owns ESPN, which also owns ESPN Outdoors. It's one of their off television channels. ESPN Outdoors owns Bass, which is the Bass Anglers Sportsman Society. Bass is kind of like the MLB for professional fishing, okay? They run the annual Bassmaster Classic. It's kind of like the Super Bowl, but for fishing. The winner of that tournament, believe it or not, for fishing, wins $500,000. Think about that. Just for fishing, $500,000. Technically, if we follow the line of where that money comes from, that money really starts from Disney and kind of works its way down to the Bassmaster Classic. Which eventually all rolls back to this guy, Kevin Van Dam. He's like the Michael Jordan of fishing. He's won the thing like 3 or 4 times. So little did you know, fishing. It's probably the only sport that's still on TV, maybe. 500,000 to go fish. What am I doing with my life? I'm making YouTube videos. Oh boy. Could have been a fisherman. Okay, we go to slide 35 now. Oh, 35 and 36. You can do this on your own time, but there's a bunch of companies I listed. This would be another game where it would have been like, hey, first one gets 20 points extra credit. I've listed a bunch of companies. You can, if you're curious about looking at ones, you can find out each one of these has a parent company. So I just listed a bunch. You can do that if you want, but slide 36, unfortunately it's not in color, and I don't know why it's not in color, but you can look up like parent company and subsidiary tree, and you'll get these type of images, and you'll see, especially if you zoom in on the image, you'll see how, wow, a lot of these brand name companies that you thought were their own companies are actually owned by larger companies. For example, I'm going to like try and get close to the thing here. So like, where are we at? Pepsi owns Gatorade. It owns Mug. Oh, it owns a lot of the chip companies like Lay's, Tostitos, Ruffles. Um, Kellogg's owns like Pop Tarts, Eggos. It owns a bunch of the gum companies like Big Red and Extra. It owns pretty much all the cereal companies almost. Um, yeah. So I mean, if you look at these and look at it close up, you'll see how a lot of these, what you thought were big brand name companies, are actually owned by even bigger companies. All right, we'll go to slide 37. This is entrepreneurship. We're finishing with this. Ooh, this is a long video. Entrepreneurship. This is the activity of setting up a business or businesses and taking on financial risks in the hope of making a profit. An entrepreneur is an individual who wants to start an entrepreneurship. On the top there, you got a picture of Steve Jobs, obviously the iPhone, and that's Bill Gates posing on one of the early Microsoft computers. That gave me a chuckle. I always hear kids talk about, I want to start my own business. I want to start my own business. The reality is this. Starting your own business, it's hard. You got to get lucky. You got to strike at the right time. You got to be well connected. You usually got to be willing to work way more than everyone else. I mean, you can do it, but the chances of you becoming the next Steve Jobs are limited. I'm just being realistic. So, you know, even to this day, I have friends who are about my age still trying to think that they can create their own like business to be the next Steve Jobs. And the reality is most of them are not going to be able to. It really takes a certain type of vision and certain drive to really be able to do it. So if you do want to start your own business, go for it. But also, I would always recommend having backup plans because you don't want to be the person who constantly just fails at starting a business and then you're never making money, right? You don't want to be in that boat. Last slide is on slide 38. It just talks about how hard it is. Watch the video link that's in there. It's very, for whatever reason, it comes out small when I imported the slides in. But this was the first ever social network. It was the Globe. It was kind of like the precursor to MySpace even. It at one point was a very popular company, and then it failed. And the video talks about how it failed and how hard it is to be in entrepreneurship and in a business. And that's pretty much the rest of this unit. So this is a long video, and there's obviously a lot of slides you got to copy down. This is probably the last thing you see video-wise from me this week. Be on the lookout, though, for anything else I might post just to get your grades up in the meantime. Make sure you're doing your paper. Make sure you're doing your essay. That is due very soon, okay? Anyways, you have any questions? Email me at ttomei@husd.k12.ca.us. Take care.